A warm welcome to this lecture, friends here at the center, and to those who are joining us online. This talk tonight is on the theme, being true to one's higher self. And we begin with a quotation from the Bhagavad Gita. Never was there a time when the self, Atman, did not exist, nor will it ever cease to exist in the future. The self pervades all and is indestructible. It is above birth and death. It doesn't come into being. It is unborn, changeless, all-pervading, ever fixed. Eternal is the self. As many of you will know, the saying, "To thine own self be true," comes in Shakespeare's play Hamlet. It's one of those sayings that seem simple and straightforward, but in fact has many levels of meaning. It can, for example, refer to our sincerity or earnestness when we express ourselves. Instead of resorting to pretense or hypocrisy, to be true to ourselves suggests that if we are not happy about something, then we should say so, and not give the impression that we think all is well. And yet, such a course is not always as easy as it might look, nor is it necessarily desirable in all circumstances. Our passing feelings are not always reliable and wise, and some feelings like greed or anger, if expressed, usually lead to further problems. Another dimension of the saying, "To thine own self be true," relates to the view that human nature is fundamentally good. And if we remain inwardly sensitive to what might be called our good side, then we cannot fail to say and do the right thing. And this idea is reflected in the teaching of the Chinese sage Confucius. He was asked, "What makes a person superior?" He replied, "Being without anxiety or fear." And he added, "When we examine our inner state and find nothing wrong, what is there to be anxious about? What is there to fear?" Such teachings refer to our personality, but again, they do not necessarily provide hope or comfort. For surely very few of us can look into our own mind and find nothing we would wish to correct or improve. Even if we do believe that we're morally sound and insist on our honesty or humility, can we really be sure that we're not deceiving ourselves? To thine own self be true. If we consult the non-dual teachings, we find that the whole problem of self-knowledge is approached from another standpoint. This is because a radically different idea of self is brought to our attention. And this was reflected in the opening quotations from the Bhagavad Gita, in the opening quotations I showed before. Never was there a time when the self, Atman, did not exist, nor will it ever cease to exist in the future. The self pervades all and is indestructible. Our body and mind, as we know, belong to the world of time. But the ultimate principle of life and consciousness within us does not belong to the world of time. It is eternal and untouched by limitations. To be true to ourselves is to realize our essential immortality and completeness. then how can we transcend this sense of being enclosed in our human limitations and live in perfect inner freedom and fulfillment? Friends, our mind holds the key to this mystery. The mind is the field in which we bring to light this illumined understanding. The greatest blessing is to be told, your reality is the eternal, because it is something we can build on through the way we think and feel. We can bring it to life in our own consciousness. Besides, to be told of the immortality of the true self strikes an echo of recognition within us, because no one can really imagine their own non-existence. The complete extinction of our being is unthinkable and goes against our deepest intuition. The question is, what exactly is the eternal in us? Obviously, the eternal is not our body, nor is it our character, which undergoes many changes throughout our life, nor our learning, which can be forgotten. The eternal is not our appearance, which alters every day, nor is it our mind, which is never still and whose states and moods come and go like passing clouds. We may ask, isn't there anything in human nature which is durable and reliable? If we want something deeper than the outer experiences, something durable, ever fulfilling, ever delightful, then how are we to proceed in the midst of this all-encompassing transiency and change? Friends, there is a way, and it is to uncover the ultimate principle of life and consciousness at the core of our own being. All delights have their root in the eternal beauty of our own higher nature. When our mind is serene and still, and in a kind of happy forgetfulness, this inner source of joy will become apparent to us. Our reality is higher, closer, and dearer than anything the world can provide. It is the eternal bliss of the self. So the advice is, do not depend on what is passing. Seek to discover the eternal in yourself. The way to our illumination is through the mind. All inspired teachings that aim at our true welfare help us to understand the inner world of our mind. We need to know the range of our mind, its limitations, its higher potentialities, and above all, how to transcend the mind. The chief means to do this can be simply expressed, although its achievement is an art and a science. It is to make our mind peaceful, established in peace. Then our mind will open to the higher knowledge that has its source in our own true self. In the pursuit of the higher peace, any tendency to harm others will drop away. because we are gaining a deeper understanding about the unity of all, so that to harm another is ultimately to harm oneself. An ancient verse shows us the universality of this outlook. And it comes in the Isha Upanishad. One who sees all beings within the self, and the self in all beings, does not despise any creature. And again, when we realize consciously that all beings are our own self, there is no further grief and delusion, because we are established in that higher knowledge of the unity of the individual and the universal self. Friends, what matters is not what we have done in life, meritorious or otherwise, but what we're reaching out for here and now. Our aspiration to self-transcendence, our longing to self-transcendence. There was a man who was a long-serving disciple of a Taoist teacher. Due to punishment for some crime, he only had one foot. Many years later, he was asked about the teacher. He said, "He accepted me and taught me as I am. Never once in 19 years did he draw attention to this physical deficiency or asked about it." What counts is not our past, but our vital and deep interest in the teachings and our willingness to learn to transform our mind and expand into self-realization. Let us ask, where is the eternal in us? In a sense, it is the ever-conscious, unchanging background of our mental life. It is the constant inner light that illumines our mental activities, and through them, everything else. In a human being, the mind and the body change, but the underlying basis of consciousness and being, identified in the non-dual teachings as our real self, is ever the same. The support of all changes, but never touched by them. This self in us is eternal. It doesn't come, it doesn't go. It is an eternal abode of peace, endless bliss. The crucial point is that it is never other than our own self. And this is what the Zen masters mean when they say, "Show me your original face, the face you had before your parents conceived you." There is a hymn which has the words, "Change and decay in all around I see. O thou who changest not, abide with me." But right now, our true being is that changeless principle. It is not only undecaying, but is peace, bliss, and light. Your reality is the eternal. We count our life in years from our physical birth, but our life really starts when we awaken to this higher dimension and long to realize it. The Sufi master Bayezid was asked, "How old are you?" He replied, "8. "But how can that be? You're a grown and aged man." "No," said Bayezid, "I only began to live when I came into touch with these higher teachings. Then began my true life." Why should our true life begin with our introduction to a path that leads to self-knowledge? Surely our life starts with our birth as a baby, and then we experience the wonderful unfoldment of potentialities as the wider world opens to us. And yet our self-development is sometimes delayed or postponed as our life becomes absorbed in daily routines and responsibilities. But the fact is that there is a higher development open to us at any time. This higher development goes far deeper than book learning and maturing our skills. This is the uncovering of that changeless, transcendent principle in our own being. It is the ultimate fulfillment of what it really means when we say, "To thine own self be true, for your reality is the eternal." Let us ask again, how can we access the eternal principle in our own being? How? The answer is that it comes to light within us in the stillness of our mind. It has been said, "You seek your bliss in movement, noise and thrill, but the true end is gained when you learn to sit still." In a certain sense, our stillness is the eternal. When the mind is quiet, when the emotions are calm, when the thoughts are few and far between, what remains is the self, the eternal, the inner light of pure consciousness, our original face. Our higher nature is revealed and shines forth when our thoughts have been completely stilled. At the start of his Yoga Sutras, the sage Patanjali defines yoga as the stilling of the thoughts of the mind. It is then that our true self shines forth as peace, illumination without boundary. Understandably, most of us find this stilling of the mind a hard thing to do. This is because it seems that the nature of the mind, like the sea, is to be in constant motion. This is certainly the case when our mind is driven by strong passions, when it is bent on personal gain and self-glory. For such a mind, there's always something to do, some business to be forced through. And so the thought waves become even more strong and turbulent. Such a mind cannot easily be brought to quiescence. but we can take a more balanced approach towards our own exuberance of mental energy by fostering an interest in higher values with the promise that great benefits and relief will be ours as we place our mind under our own benevolent care. Yes, our own benevolent care. Our progress to the higher freedom begins when we reposition ourselves as regards the mind and resolve to get the best out of it as its master and guide. This way is characteristic of the Adhyatma Yoga, the yoga of self-knowledge, which is the practical application of the non-dual philosophy. He will learn that the knowledge of the nature of the self arises in a mind which has been pacified, harmonized, and enlightened. A pacified mind is not one where there is stoppage of thought, but where the thoughts that arise are of a peaceful nature. Such thoughts are the fruits of our meditation and reflection, free from strong likes and dislikes. A mind that can turn easily and happily to meditation. If we make a point of reading writings that spring from men and women of peace and universal benevolence, our mind will become receptive to their purifying influence. And this will help us to recover and deepen our inner peace. A harmonized mind means the resolution of inner conflicts, so that our emotions are not at war with our higher aspirations. An enlightened mind, in this context, means a mind that is lit by, uplifted by the insights it gains from the teachings on self-knowledge. It knows indirectly that the self is light, peace, and bliss, self-evident and ever achieved. What is necessary is to convert this indirect knowledge, our intellectual understanding, into direct experience of reality. And this is the ultimate purpose of our self-inquiry. The Kena Upanishad calls our true self, our innermost consciousness and being, the mind of the mind, the life of life. Unlike our biological life, this higher transcendental life is never brought to an end. It is universal and eternal. The Upanishads also use the words, the death of death. Just as water puts out fire, so the higher knowledge dispels all delusion and confers the realization of conscious immortality, not of body and mind, but of our divine center. Two of life's greatest gifts are time and attention. Both can be wasted, or they can become aids to realization. In Shakespeare's play, Richard II, there is the line, I wasted time, and now does time waste me? The fact is that during our day, for most people, there are countless minutes that are given to daydreams and speculation, mental activities that have no purpose or goal. Yet, friends, at any given moment, we can also bring to mind some great and deep idea relating to our higher self and potentialities. These thoughts appeal directly to our deeper nature. What matters is now, and the time and attention we still have available to us as a precious resource. It is now, and from now onwards, that our mind can be converted into a palace of light through higher thought and practice. Of course, we need to be alert if we want to use our time in the best way. In one tradition, we hear of a tailor who told such entertaining stories to his customers that they would become delirious with laughter. And when their alertness was immobilized in this way, he would snip away great lengths of the precious satin or silk that they brought with them, they brought to him. The length of cloth stands for our life, and the tailor stands for the distractions that steal away our time and often leave us poorer spiritually. But we can learn to be masters of our life and fill our moments with the highest quality so that they add to our inner wealth. An example of the influence of spiritual thought on our daily life comes in the poems of a Japanese craftsman named Tai Chi, who constantly repeated the mantra Namo Amida Butsu, salutations to the Buddha of infinite light. He writes, how grateful I feel. Everything I do in this world, my daily work for livelihood, this is all transferred into building up the pure land. How grateful I feel. The treasure grows all the more as it is used. It is the most wondrous treasure, and I am the recipient of the good things. How happy I am with the favor. Namo Amida Butsu. Tai Chi uses the gift of every spare moment to pacify, harmonize, and enlighten his mind. Time and attention well spent. Every age has its powerful distractions, things which catch our attention, connect with our unfulfilled desires, and then hold us captive. Nowadays, we see the mesmerizing power of the moving image. Our eyes seem to be drawn to the screen, and it is sometimes with effort to lift our attention away from the screen and get on with our business. In a similar way, our mental life is a series of moving images, feelings, memories, and wishes that capture our attention so powerfully that we actually feel, I am the mind. I am this mind. We become spellbound by the life of the mind and come to believe that This transient stream of appearances is our reality. The non-dual teachings come as a counter-charm. They awaken us from the hypnotic influence of the mind and the emotions that magnifies the passing experiences and hides the reality. Let us appeal to our real being behind the veil of thoughts. Friends, let us remind ourselves, no, I'm not the mind. I've got myself falsely identified with it. And this wrong identification has become a habit. In reality, I am the pure, changeless consciousness that knows the thoughts from the inside. I am the knower of the mind. I transcend thoughts and all other limitations. I am infinite and immortal. Let us awaken to what we really are. To be true to ourselves, to realize our reality is the eternal, we have to be willing to make ongoing experiments in the stilling of our mind and in colonizing our mind, so to say, with thoughts based on the highest and most peaceful giving values. Values such as truth, beauty, bliss, unity, harmlessness, and the longing for the freedom of self-realization. For such thoughts themselves are conducive to our serenity. What is the source of joy? What is the source of joy? The root of joy is not in our linkage with outer things. Joy has its source in the depth of our own being. It is identical with that consciousness and life principle that is our foundation. The story is told of a village chief who complained that he could not hear his son's voice in the chorus of boys singing out their lesson in the local school. The teacher insisted that the boy was singing and proved it by silencing the other boys one by one until only the song of the chief's son became fully audible. In a similar way, the desires in the mind and the mental activity they generate create a kind of inner noise that hides the true nature of our higher self. But when this mental noise is reduced and eventually silenced, the joy and peace at the root of the mind will make itself felt. The path to self-realization involves learning to calm the inner world of the mind, so that in that tranquility we discern the truth about our higher self. Through this means, we open ourselves to the recognition that our true I is the power that makes thought possible, yet remains absolute, untaintable, transcendent. The ultimate light which lies behind the thoughts and which reveals them. This is our eternal reality and always has been. Therefore, our life will truly prove worthwhile if we do not place our dependence on what is passing, but seek to uncover the treasure that is our own true self. Friends, being self, it is near at hand, closer than breathing or thought. And this treasure, once uncovered, will never leave us. We will be happy and fulfilled forever. For our true self is the nature of bliss, peace, and fulfillment. The eternal is thine, and that thou art. Thank you for your attention.